Thank you so much for having me here today. It's really a tremendous pleasure and an honor to have the opportunity to share my latest paper with you all, entitled "Using Computer Science to Detect Cheat Tolerant Cartels." This paper is part of a series of papers I'm writing about how we can, in antitrust law, use computer science to enforce antitrust law more effectively in a digital environment setting. Why? Because one of the main challenges that we have in antitrust law right now is how we can deal with digital markets. And the main proposal has been to introduce, to use ex-ante regulation. My proposal is that we should better understand what is the context we are dealing with, which is about markets ran by computers and algorithms. So this is why I started thinking about using computer science, and this is why I'm proposing this new approach in which I suggest to introduce computer science to complement the present legal and economic analysis, not to replace. So in this specific paper, I deal with cartel agreements, which is the most severe anti-competitive conduct, and I have other works in progress. Please, feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions. Otherwise, I look forward to knowing your thoughts at the end of the presentation and to take any questions. So let me. So this is the outline of my paper and of my presentations to you today. So basically, I will briefly introduce what are cartels, how computers can build strong cartels, and what are the solutions that I propose to tackle these strong cartels that I assess can occur in a computer science context framework. So cartels, as mentioned, represent the most severe anti-competitive conduct. So for who is not familiar with antitrust law main goal is to increase consumer welfare by securing competition in markets. How? Tackling two main anti-competitive conduct. So we have a monopoly, so a firm that can charge the monopoly price, so an high price on consumers, because it's the only firm in a market, so has this power. Otherwise, the same result can be achieved by competitors in a market. How? Through coordination, through an agreement. So competitors can agree to charge the monopoly price. So the result is basically the same if you have a monopoly or if you have a cartel. And it's bad for consumers. Why? Because you cannot benefit from a lower price. So in the figure here, you see Alex. Let's assume that Alex, Alice, Maria, and Bob are the only cafe producers in the US, and they agree to set the price at $10. So you cannot benefit from a lower price, for example, $8. So and this is bad for consumers because for the reason that I just explained, and it's the same result that typically is achieved if you have a monopoly. So antitrust really care about competition to benefit all consumers. And the good news, so we want to tackle these severe anti-competitive agreements. The good news is that cartels are inherently unstable. Why? Because cartel members have high incentives to cheat. So in this agreement, this is an illegal agreement. So cartel members cannot enforce this agreement in courts, so they cannot go before a judge and ask, okay, if someone cheats, I want to punish. So you cannot enforce an illegal anti-competitive agreement, so they need to trust each other. So it's based a cartel on a trust relationship, and they have high incentives to cheat the cartel members. Why? Because they can profit more by charging less. So by cheating on this agreement, this illegal agreement. And firms, at least in the US, don't violate antitrust law if they simply charge the price merely observing their competitors. So if firms look at what the other competitors do in the market and they emulate, they do the same, this is not illegal, and at least in the US. This is called tacit collusion. And tacit collusion, is missing the collusion, the coordination among the conspiracy among cartel members. You don't have cartel members because there is not the agreement. So this is lawful. And it's rational that you look at what your competitor does. So this is why antitrust law doesn't prosecute a unilateral rational conduct. And the challenge, the implications is that antitrust needs to prosecute these illegal cartel agreements without penalizing unilateral rational conduct. So how antitrust handle this situation? So how you can tackle illegal cartel agreements if you cannot rely on a written agreement? So you need to show, at least the courts in the US have been clarified that you need to show evidence of a circumstantial evidence of a cartel agreement. How? Courts developed some plus factors, some elements that if they are present, they show evidence of a tacit, what is called tacit agreement. And these plus factors are based on legal and economic assessments. So for example, plus factors to detect right now a cartel agreement include price parallelism or market characteristics such as a highly concentrated market or high barriers to entry, or the fact that competitors colluded in the past is another plus factor, or the conduct is the rational result of a concerned action. So these are elements that suggest the presence of a cartel agreement, because as mentioned, we cannot rely on a written agreement. And economists and courts also agree that to show evidence of a cartel agreement, you need to prove certain mechanisms to deter and punish cheating. Why? Because as mentioned, cartels are inherently unstable because there are high incentives of cartel members to cheat. So the idea is that a cartel could not survive without mechanisms to detect and punish cheating. So you need to prove these mechanisms. Computer science is interesting. Why? Because it's creating new ways to build strong cartels that can tolerate a degree of cheating. So they can, and we will see how computers can build strong cartels. So computers in a distributed network, they typically need to agree on a shared value. So computers need to have a consistent view to work in a network, typically. So as long as computers work well, there is not really a problem for computers to agree on a shared value. But what if a computer crashes or starts acting arbitrarily in a way that looks almost malicious? So it's a computer is unreliable, so you cannot really rely on the behavior of a computer. So this problem in computer science is known as Byzantine Generals Problem. So in the Byzantine Generals Problem, so computer scientists felt compelling, interesting the idea of using a story, a catchy story, to describe the problem of reaching an agreement with an unreliable computer, with a malicious computer that can can behave in different ways, so in a way that is unpredictable. And so they used this story to describe this problem. So the story about some generals coming from the Byzantine Empire that they need to agree on whether to attack or retreat from an enemy city. So they need to agree on a common plan because they know that attacking alone will be a suicide mission. So there is this problem is relies on a coordination problem. And they also know that a general can be malicious, can be a traitor. And so this is why in the figure you see the green generals are the loyal generals. The red one is the traitor, and the white one is the commander, so is the general that sends the message as first. And generals can communicate by messenger only. I found this problem, this computer science problem, interesting because it relies on a trust issue. So it's a trust problem. The generals need to achieve an agreement on whether to attack or retreat from an enemy city, and similar, so without really completely trusting each other. In my cartel cheating problem, the situation is similar because we have cartel members that they rely on a trust relationship, so they need to find an agreement without really trusting each other. So in both scenarios there is a trust problem and an agreement problem. So I found interesting to draw an analogy between the Byzantine Generals Problem and the cartel cheating problem in my antitrust context. So let's see how, so computer scientists, the paper that theorized this problem and called this problem Byzantine Generals Problem is called Byzantine Generals Problem paper, and it was published by Leslie Lamport, Robert Shostak, and Marshall Peace in 1982. And it's after that, computer scientists started studying this problem. More there was a lot of interest in this problem, but they set the tone, I would say. They theorized and they called this problem Byzantine Generals Problem. And the first finding that they found, and you can see described in their paper, is about the impossibility results. So they found that this problem, this agreement problem, is impossible to solve with three generals. So they started studying this problem with three, because with two the problem is trivial. If one is a traitor, the remaining general cannot agree with himself. So you need at least three. So they started studying this problem with three generals, assuming that one is a traitor. And they need to agree. So why the problem is impossible? Because if you look at the first scenario, so in which the commander is a traitor, cheats, and in the second scenario in which the lieutenant 2 is the traitor, the result doesn't change from a lieutenant 1 perspective. So in both scenarios, lieutenant 1 receives the same signal: attack and retreat. He receives attack from the commander and retreat from lieutenant 2, because lieutenant 2 received the retreat. And the same situation occurs if you have the lieutenant 2 that is a traitor. So in both situations, you have lieutenant 1 that receives attack and retreat, but it doesn't know who is the traitor, so it cannot agree with the loyal lieutenant. And this theoretically, the same situation can be applied in my cartel context. So in my cartel cheating problem, theoretically, this this occurs also in my cartel cheating problem. So Bob, my cartel member, will always receive 10 and let's say 12, but it can be any value, because yeah, differently from economics, in computer science they think in abstract, so they don't consider economic incentives. So and economics, yeah, other analysis. So it can be any value. So the important thing is that the information that Bob received from the two other generals is different. So the problem is unsolvable because it cannot be, the agreement cannot be reached. Let's see the solution. So luckily, computer scientists found solutions to this problem. Indeed, what I've done is to go through the Byzantine agreement protocols that govern like computer networks and tolerate Byzantine nodes, computers, so malicious nodes, a degree we will see of tolerance, and what I've done is to extract from these protocols the mechanisms, the techniques that are used to tackle this problem. It's not that, like in a cartel agreement, it's not like with a plus factor that you resolve this problem. So it's not with only a mechanism that you see here listed that you solve the Byzantine Generals Problem. So you need to use in combination, but like the intuition is that these are the mechanisms, that the techniques that are usually used to enable computers to reach an agreement when you have an unreliable computer. So the techniques include broadcasting, leader election, cryptography, private channels, a minimum of 4 participants. I will briefly go through each of these mechanisms, and I just want to point out that what I've done after like finding these mechanisms, these techniques, I have assessed whether like these mechanisms are already captured by the present cartel law, so by the plus factors that we are actually using in the US to detect these cartel agreements. And you can see, so yes, for broadcasting a leader election. Why? Because broadcasting implies that rather than having a point-to-point communication, you send the message to all computers part of the network at the same time. And the same rationale there is in public announcements right now in cartel agreements, because it's a technique that is used in cartel agreements. So competitors send a public announcements to share like information. So public announcements, like broadcasting by itself, doesn't like enable to reach an agreement, but it's an element that can be used and is considered right now by courts in the cartel analysis. So it's not something new that computer science is telling me, but it's like confirming that public announcements can increase coordination. The second element is a cartel leader, like a leader election. So similar to a cartel context, so in which I have competitors that elect, that have a leader. Also in computer science, this protocol, often they design protocols with a leader election. Why? Because by electing a leader, by identifying a leader, you introduce a single point of coordination, which is the leader. So basically the leader sets what is the shared value, so what is the agreed value. And this is facilitate the agreement in the network. Other solutions, so the solutions that I mentioned are not presently captured by the law, are cryptography. So in this situation, you see the three generals are back. So, and you might ask, okay, I just mentioned that the problem is impossible with three, so how why I'm telling you like the same story with 3 generals, because the problem is solvable if you can use cryptography. Cryptography implies that you can sign the message. So in this situation, so differently from the before, so the situation that I described that is impossible, if you can use signed messages, you can solve the problem, because our Lieutenant 1 will receive attack and retreat, but this time the message that the commander, the traitor, sends is signed. So Lieutenant 1 can see that the commander is sending an attack and a retreat message. So it's sending different messages to the 2 lieutenants. So it can figure out that the commander is a traitor, and the loyal generals can isolate the traitor and reach an agreement. So this is why cryptography is helpful to solve the Byzantine Generals Problem. The other solution that is similar, the rationale is similar, is by using private channels. So private channels, similar to cryptography, you use private channels to increase security in the communication. And usually private channels rely on encryption to secure communication. And they enable to keep the information private, to limit, in a way that you limit malicious nodes to intercept the message. So, and there are studies in economics in which, private informations are is valuable for cartel members to reach an agreement. And so similar to cryptography, here like private channels are used in computer science to secure the communication and to enable the loyal generals, computers, to reach an agreement. Probably the most interesting solution that I find compelling, because it's telling me something that I didn't know, and I think something a bit different from we usually hear from economists, and I look forward to knowing your thoughts, is that this problem is solvable with 4 participants. How? And multiple rounds of communication. So in this situation, you see the commander is loyal, the traitor is Lieutenant 3. And in the first round of communication, the commander is sending attack because to all the other generals because he's honest. And so in the second round, Lieutenant 3, the malicious the traitor, is sending retreat rather than attack. And the solution, so the problem is solvable in the Byzantine Generals Problem paper, also if the commander is a traitor. So the rules, the theorem works as long as you have at least 4 participants and 1 is malicious, and multiple rounds of communication. So in the third rounds of communication, this is the situation, since Lieutenant 2 receives attack, and retreat. So in this situation, he can reach an agreement because he has a majority value, which is attack, and is the correct value. So computer scientists solved the problem. And the same solution theoretically can be valid for my cartel cheating problem, because in this case I have the similar, I employ the similar solution. So the problem can be solved in a similar fashion, because I assume that the dishonest is sending a different value, but this is not enough to distract the network and to it doesn't compromise the reach of an agreement. So these are basically the computer science solutions. So to sum up, right now the law is providing legal and economic plus factors, and in this list are summarized the main ones. So price parallelisms, regular communication among competitors, industry characteristics, the conduct is the rational result of a concerned action, competitors colluded in the past, What is my proposal is that in the light of the computer context, so of the analysis of how computers like tackle this agreement problem, we still need the legal and economic factors, elements to assess the cartel agreements. But what I suggest is to introduce the solutions that right now courts do not consider. So to introduce these new solutions, new mechanisms into the cartel analysis to catch these strong cartels. Because right now, as mentioned, we look at whether there are mechanisms to deter and prevent cheating, to detect and deter cheating, but there are situations, computer science is telling us, in which we can tolerate the degree of cheating. So thank you so much, and I really look forward to knowing your thoughts.